Let's look at underperformance. Preconditions for underperformance can include good sales demand, but there might be pressure on the contribution margin, low capacity utilization. There could even be pressure on the competitive advantage. While you have it, might have pressure. Relative productivity might be low. The business can be cash trapped, or there can be a shortage of cash at that point. If we look at a company that is performing well, all things mostly appear to work well. There's good sales demand. Market share is acceptable. You have a competitive advantage that is established. There's unfortunately invisible rising cost per unit. And normally, a company that is performing well will grow. When we look at strategic distress, then things changed. Somewhere in the environment, things changed. And it's forced on the company, and it experiences dwindling sales. It's losing market share. It's sometimes losing competitive advantage. The demand has changed for its products. There are competitive products coming into the market. Suddenly, they experience a growth in inventory, and the expenses increase. Finally, in the crisis turnaround situation, the preconditions are often similar to strategic distress, but it is more severe. So we find rapidly dwindling sales. You are quickly losing market share. The competitive advantage is lost. Demand is completely changed towards other products, and you are in a constant negative cash situation. Once a turnaround situation has been identified, only then can we search for strategies. Those strategies are mostly focused at the 3 quadrants marked with question marks. As we know, it does not exclude the performing well quadrant, but for that quadrant we normally can apply the Porter strategies, and they would work well there. Given the 4 turnaround situations, we now want to select strategies associated with each of these turnaround situations. Let's start with the underperformance. In underperformance, the company's core strategy becomes one of improving efficiency. So there's a turnaround, but the turnaround is required to be based on improved efficiency. And efficiency strategies has several practices that we can use, ranging from complex to very simple. Firstly, protection of the competitive advantage. All efficiency strategies are driven by cost cutting. Also, improvement of capacity utilization. The idea is to generate cash. Therefore, we sometimes outsource non-essential business activities. We improve the productivity. We try to reduce assets, and even things like improving of stock control. And together, these strategies contribute then to improved efficiency. When we look at performing well, A company that is performing well tries to sustain that performance. So underlying is a sustainability strategy, and the need is for renewal and improvement over the long term. The associated practices for performing well are typically those associated with Porter's generic strategies, which would suggest that drive the costs down and improve differentiation by pursuing sales, seeking new markets, maximizing market share, entrenching the competitive advantage if you have one, trying to achieve sustainable growth. We try to optimize capacity and find ways to organically and inorganically renew the business. Together, these practices improve the sustainability, and the thinking is long term. Moving to strategic distress, we know that in strategic distress, it is the external environment that is changing, which places pressure on the organization, and a forced repositioning strategy is required to turn that business around. Forced suggests less time or little time to act, and the practices that we use for repositioning would require finding alternative revenue streams, finding new products, seeking alternative markets, and you are forced to innovate because circumstances force you to respond to a change in the environment, and the innovation is required. Diversification might be an option, improved differentiation, finding niche markets, and even things like acquiring businesses to access new revenue streams can be used. All performing well tries to sustain that. Finally, when we go to crisis as a final turnaround situation, there are not many options. Therefore, the strategies are referred to as last resort strategies. So we try to rescue the business or whatever can be rescued by pursuing practices such as maybe a defensive merger can be used, divesting in certain units, liquidation of certain divisions, and finally asking for debt forgiveness from the main creditors in order to pursue business maybe in a different way. Experience that the drive has a specific direction, and the arrows there suggest us to how we think, from last resort strategy to efficiency, and from efficiency back towards sustainability. When we have a forced repositioning strategy, the end goal would be to finish off in the performing well quadrant. We also know that most strategies will contain portions of efficiency strategy. All strategies, when we talk about turnaround, include efficiency strategies, driving costs down. It is at the heart of all turnaround strategies to drive costs down. But in a recession, you will see that the forces are in the opposite direction. It pushes away from performing well, underperformance, strategic distress, and everything is pushed in the direction of crisis. And when leadership is required to realize exactly what turnaround situation they are facing in order to turn back from the final crisis situation as early as possible. To conclude, we must say a few things. One is that turnaround situations can be quite complex, And in order to understand the complexity, we have devised this four-step process that we have discussed so far. Firstly, you have to identify your specific turnaround situation. Once you have done that, you will then know what are the appropriate strategies or the appropriate strategy broadly that is associated with that turnaround situation. Then that strategy suggests certain practices that would support you to achieve that strategy. And then finally, I think once you have identified that and you try to implement those practices, you will find definite benefit in the achievement of the turnaround strategy. There is a final slide that will contain additional support material for those who want to read any further on the subject. And my wish is for you to benefit from this process, and if we can save one job, then I believe this video was successful. Thank you very much.